Welcome, dear attendees. Welcome to the session dedicated to science communication. Eleni and I, as the eShape communication and dissemination team, and today along with a group of experts, we will do our best to make the inconceivable conceivable in terms of effective science communication. And by science communication, we mean the science and its impact, the way to make it interesting, accessible, stimulating, and thought-provoking. The purpose of this session is to reveal the pivotal role of good communication and the skills involved in being effective. We will share knowledge and best practices, identify the most practical methods and tactics to reach your non-expert audience, and bottom line, tell your key message in an impactful and compelling way. In this important endeavor, our expert speakers will give you a new perspective, knowledge, and insight, alleviating any concerns you may have. Join us in welcoming Dimitrios Papadakis, co-founder and director of Evenflow and partner of eShape, Dr. Argyro Kavvada, program manager of NASA's Earth Science Division's Sustainable Development Goals activities, that has built a network of thought leaders and collaborators in the Earth observation and international development landscape. Alan Carroll, program manager for storytelling at ESRI. Prior to joining ESRI, he worked at National Geographic for 27 years. And one thing is for certain, he has a nice story to tell there. And last but not least, Bente Lilja, a member of the GEO community since 2004 and member of the eShape Advisory Board. Before our speakers take the floor, let us draw your attention once more to what we want to highlight today. Undoubtedly, communication is an integral part of any successful organization. We must consider a crucial factor, how to focus more on market-related events instead of space-related events in order to break out of the Earth Observation Club and establish contacts with relevant users, stakeholders, and market players. Why should scientists have to explain their science? Well, the moral of the story is that when scientists communicate effectively, science thrives. When you are able to communicate beyond your peers to broader, non-scientist audiences, it promotes understanding of its wider relevance to society and can help make science more diverse and inclusive. But what is effective communication? It's transmitting your message clearly and concisely so that it is understood. It's about engaging your audience. How can you better communicate with the public? First of all, you have to understand your audience and the level of knowledge and interest of your audience. You have to be able to define your key messages. Actually, it's clarification of what is important. Stay focused on the essential information. And you also have to ask yourself, why is this important? You have to be able to tell a compelling story. All research has a story behind it. Social media can vastly increase professional network size and diversity. It is a great way to keep up to date with research findings. Share your research with people in and outside your field. It has been shown that sharing good scientific papers on social media exponentially increases dissemination and boosts the number of citations. At this point, we would like to show you a short but concise video. Indeed, when scientists communicate effectively, science thrives. And now it's time for our guest speakers to take the floor. Dimitris?
Okay, hello there. My name is Dimitrios Papadakis. I'm co-founder and director of Evenflow, and I'll be talking to you for about 15 minutes on the subject of how we can communicate beyond the space and Earth observation ecosystems. I see this as both a challenge and an opportunity. Firstly, just a few words about myself and about my company. Evenflow is a young SME. We were founded in Brussels 5 years ago. And our mission is to promote and facilitate new Earth observation applications. We do this through a combination of consulting, innovation support, and communication support. And we've had the pleasure of participating in numerous Horizon 2020 projects, as well as some service contracts for European agencies and institutions. And on the basis of that experience, which I'll be sharing some of today, I would like to try and answer this question of how EO and space can communicate beyond their own ecosystems. So the first question is, why is it that the Earth observation sector is accused of failing to reach outside its own ecosystems? In reflecting on my discussion today, I thought it would be useful to try and answer this question. And I had a few speculative thoughts, which I'll share with you. And of course, this is probably a debate in its own right, but just to kind of skim the surface here, it seems to me that we all know the Earth observation sector in particular has had a long history which has been dominated by public sector contracts and by public sector customers. And it's possible that this has dominated for so long that actually when we talk more broadly about the general public, about broader societal benefits, this perhaps gets a little bit lost in the wash. On the other hand, Earth observation has the potential to serve so many different audiences that I feel sometimes we maybe get stuck with too many targets. This target plurality appears usually at the institutional level, but it ends up with what I will call the search for missing users, which we have seen in various places across the institutional landscape, and I'll be talking specifically about the case of Copernicus. And that also creates this thing which I've called needle in a haystack approach. And you'll see what I mean when I come to it, but it more or less stems from the fact that our applications, or at least the technologies that we're using, have such a broad range of potential applications. And we end up missing the specific targets of individual applications. So the third point is focusing on means, not ends, focusing on the technologies that we're using and rather than the results that they're producing. So EO is so often just part of a bigger story. And I feel like we need to know more about telling the rest of the story and not just focusing on the EO part. And the last idea that came to my mind is, of course, that within, particularly in the context of research projects like the ones that we are working in and the one that is hosting us today, there is a sometimes lack of comms expertise. So obviously companies like my own and like some of the other speakers that you'll hear from today are precisely brought on board to address this fact. Okay. One thing that occurred to me is that this whole debate around opening up science communication is certainly not new, and it's not new either for the Earth observation sector, as you all should probably be aware that there is this group association called Eurisy, founded in 1989 with the precise goal of building communities outside space. So this is a long-standing battle, and I mean, Eurisy does an excellent job, and I think there's a lot to be learned from them and from other initiatives that similarly strive to sort of democratize space and to reach outside its own boundaries. Now let's have a look at some of the other points, and I'll skip through them before we get into the examples of good practice. But there is this curse of the anchor tenants that I mentioned. So the fact that we are very much reliant in the EO industry as a whole on the public sector. So these figures come from EARSC surveys. It was 53% public sector customers in 2012, and it's even rising. So go to 2019 and look at the 66%. And I mean, I'm not saying this is necessarily the reason for the introspective approach, but it could be a factor, and it's something we should reflect on as a sector, whether that's having an impact on our ability to more broadly impact outside our own sector. Okay, so target plurality. This is the idea that there's a plethora of applications. And so you come to the homepage of Copernicus, as an example, and you see these 6 service options. But the question I would ask is, how would I know where to look unless I already understood the content of the program? So if I were a coastal ecologist, would I look under land or marine? Or would I look somewhere else? If I were an epidemiologist, would I know where to seek information about how Earth observation data can support my study of the spread of diseases? And of course, this is very topical these days. And where would I look if I was a tourism operator? I'd have at least 3 places that I could immediately think of where I might want to find information. Okay, you might say, Dimitri, you're being mean to Copernicus. This is obviously not the intended purpose of these 6 services, but the example is illustrative, and it's not just at institutional level. To come to another issue here with the idea that individual targets are not seeing themselves reflected in the communications front stage, we look at the Copernicus brochure. In 2015, they did implement a system whereby you actually had more thematic categories to look into: health, tourism, and others. But this regressed back to the old way in 2019. So I think the message here is that institutional communications often have a lot of fingers in the pie and a lot of fights to actually get through to the end result. And perhaps that's why this approach was not followed. And then we come to this idea of the missing user. So this table comes from the Copernicus user uptake strategy that was released in around 2015 or 16. And it's a table of users. So it's a 2x2 matrix mapping end users and intermediate users against the public and the private. But note that even at this level, we just see private companies, clusters of private companies, and private companies again. So I'm wondering, how much further would we need to drill before we actually found the missing user? It seems that there's still a lack of definition. Who are the audiences? And I think the messages from Mirka's presentation and the video are really very important. We need to know why we're communicating. We need to know who we're communicating to. And this is just an example of this needle in the haystack approach. If I look at the use cases on copernicus.eu, I see that I go to agriculture, for example, and I see that already immediately in the first 6 results, there's a number of country-specific examples. There's one that's not operational yet, and there's another, the other 2 are for public authorities only. So if I was a farmer, the target of this whole sector, the farmer himself or herself, I wouldn't see myself relating to any of these categories. Again, just an illustrative example of the kind of thing that can happen due to this target plurality. I think there's another example here. It's not just institutions. This is Maxar, and there's a similar problem. I'm a farmer. I want to understand what's on offer for me from the EO sector. I go here, I click on agriculture, and there isn't even a detailed fiche. But if there was, I wonder what it would say for me. It might be agriculture-based organizations, a bit more general. So coming back to the question of how we can improve this, I would like to show you some examples of how we've addressed these problems in our projects. And there were just 2 of these examples, and then that'll be the end of my presentation. So in a Horizon 2020 project, which has concluded rather recently, but it was about a year ago, the challenge for us was to market an agricultural advisory platform to small farmers and agronomist consultants in Greece, Serbia, and Spain. That was the brief as outlined and delineated by the project and the proposal that we successfully submitted. So in addressing this, I mean, one would always ask oneself, why am I trying to access these farmers? Well, I want them to try my new platform, And how do I get to them? Well, there are a couple of clues. The first thing, I just want to show you our homepage on our website. So we tried to make it absolutely clear what it was we were doing directly in the front page, and explain that we're aimed at smallholder farmers. So these are our target audiences. You can also see that we did implement a multilingual function there to address the three countries that I spoke about. What else did we do? Well, we thought about branding, and we thought specifically about the fact that our project was designed as an innovation action, designed to have impacts after the actual funding period was finished in the commercial realm. So we designed a brand that would be used during the project and then smoothly transition to commercial branding after the project. And what you can see here, this comes back to the ends versus means discussion. We did not highlight the fact that space was involved in our application at the level of our branding. And we felt this was very important. What was important was to give the farmers a message that was very clear and easy to understand. Data turning into a plant. Okay, I get data and I have better growth of crops. That was the basic message from our logo. And we mentioned the satellites, but we mentioned them in the back of the brochure as part of a series of other data sources. And the farm intelligence is the main message that we want our farmers to take from this. So that's a word on how we branded the project. How did we reach out to the farmers? Well, there were a series of tools that we used to actually disseminate and communicate in this project. And actually, reflecting back on what we did, I can say that the real impact did not come from our social media. It did not come from our quite lovely email newsletter that we regularly published. We had a commercial website up and running, and that was important, but it was not the most important thing. The most important thing we did, there were two. The first one was radio and television appearances in the local language. It wasn't always in the local language, but we made sure that there were translations available. It often was directly in the local language. And this was very important, far more important than any of the standard communication stuff that you are expected to produce. But in the case of the farmer, the important thing is to see how this actually affects them. And they could do that best through radio and TV. We also had some gatekeepers and key makers in our consortium that gave us access to these groups. So we had two agricultural associations in our consortium, actually as part of the funded consortium. So this was incredibly useful to open up doors for us and make keys for us to open other doors on our own. And the most impactful thing that we could have done is something like this. So we were invited to our farmers, one particular farmer. He's the gentleman on the right of the computer. And we were invited to the farm in Ruma in Serbia. There we met some of his neighbors and friends who are also farmers, and we gave a live demonstration to them. In this moment, it's a very simple act. Showing up, sharing some bread, having something to drink with these guys, and showing them our application. Absolutely important and absolutely appropriate to the community that we were addressing. All right then. Another example. The challenge was to set up a business accelerator, okay, and attract 350 applicants to this accelerator, supporting startups and companies using Earth observation to create new services. Okay. So this project addressed three sectors: food, energy, and environment. And we were challenged to go outside of the sort of internal community of known actors and known users. The project is Parsec, and some of you might know about this. And what we have is a clear vision here of what it is that we're doing. And of course, when you're giving away equity-free, funding, you might say this is easy. Well, it's not as easy as you might think to enter into these new communities. So in our case, for Parsec, choosing the right channels was indeed involving a lot of digital stuff and print media while it lasted, as well as online advertising. So in this case, we were able to make good use of both physical and digital means, and they were the right channels for the audiences at hand, because we're talking about startups, we're talking about entrepreneurs, we're talking about digital technologies. Our gatekeepers were also very important to us here. In our consortium, we did have 2 clusters linked to the areas that we were focused on, as well as EARSC opening a doorway to our EO partners, which were also required. And finally, just a couple of words about ways in which we try to differentiate our communication. So in Parsec, we had this concept of a flyer that actually is also a paper plane. And this was extremely, extremely popular. And it's also meaningful in the sense that our idea was, you let your idea take flight, you sort of boost the idea and you let it fly. So this worked very well. And at the time, last year, end of 2019, we were attending a lot of conferences. This is from the EU Space Week, and handing out these, having competitions to fold them different ways and getting people very interested in our accelerator. And just a final example from another project, just to show you some of the diversity of the ideas that are possible and what it can do. This is from a project looking at water monitoring, inland water monitoring, called Eomores, and the idea there was to produce a promotional item that actually showed you a little bit about the what it is the project was doing. So on the base of this mug is a Secchi disc, which is a device used to measure water transparency. If it goes beyond a certain depth, you call it a Secchi depth, and when you can't see the division between these plates anymore. So this we put inside a coffee mug, and it again was very highly regarded by the users who got to see it in our conferences and events. All right, then, just slightly over time, but conclusions are, we need to learn more about how sectors are internally organized before we go into them. There's no use stopping at private companies. We have to drill deeper. We need better partnerships and more partnerships with gatekeepers and key makers to help us open the doors and get into the rooms where those sector specialists are having their conversations. Always a big proponent of high quality branding and innovative communication materials, but a note of caution: choose the channels carefully. Don't waste time, don't waste resources. If it's better to be face-to-face, then let's go for face-to-face. Of course, still have a website, but put the focus where it's most needed, and never underestimate the power of personal contact, which of course, I think we're all still trying to understand how we can reach a situation where we'll be able to meet one another in physical events again and have personal contact for promoting our projects. And those are more or less the messages I wanted to share with you. So I would like to thank my hosts and thank all of you. And I will stop sharing my screen now and hand over back to our moderators. So thank you very much.
Dimitris, thank you for your insightful presentation. And the next is Argyro Kavvada. Argyro.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If you give me a moment. Okay, Eleni, could you please confirm that you can see my screen?
It's Mirka, yes.
Mirka, yes, apologies. No. Thank you. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for the invitation, for having me today. It's great to be here. I start by just briefly introducing myself. So I'm an atmospheric scientist by training, and I currently work at NASA's Earth Science Division Applied Sciences program, leading activities that focus on enabling Earth observation applications for sustainable development and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. In addition, I serve as the Executive Secretary for an international initiative that I'll be talking to you about a bit today, the Earth Observations for Sustainable Development Goals, or EO4SDG initiative, within the Group on Earth Observations. And so you can see there the link to the website and also Twitter account for that initiative. And so let me start by briefly talking to you about that initiative, and then some of the ways in which through this activity we have been focusing on communicating and pursuing a variety of outreach and engagement activities to help enable the wider sustained utilization of Earth observation data for sustainable development. And so EO4SDG was established back in 2016, shortly after the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development was adopted, to help extend usage of Earth observations and really advance global knowledge about effective ways that Earth observations and geospatial information more broadly can support the SDGs. And so one of the three main goals of this initiative, as mentioned, is outreach, engagement, and communications to showcase effective uses of Earth observations to achieve benefits and positive impacts by helping encourage nations and stakeholders to pursue uses, and also through sharing examples of the impact of applying Earth observation data for the SDGs. And so you can see the focus of the initiative is in really engaging with a suite of users from the global level, UN entities, and other key groups that have a role to play in the SDG process of monitoring, reporting, but also implementation, to actors at the regional, national, and local level. So at the national level, we're working with statistics offices and ministries that are responsible for SDG implementation and monitoring, in addition to at the subnational level, city governments and municipalities that are also seeing how they can align the SDGs to their local priorities and development plans. In addition, EU4SDG is working with a number of other initiatives and thematic activities within the Group on Earth Observations to help bring scientific observations to users who need them to address development needs in different sectors, such as biodiversity, forestry, agriculture, or urban-related issues. And so making projects' achievements visible in connection to the SDGs is really crucial to help facilitate knowledge sharing and collaboration among project teams and relevant stakeholders at these different levels. And this is also important because it helps really take stock of what, where, and how cooperation works, where it does not work, and how it can be improved. And so we know by looking and trying to work across these different levels that many practitioners and relevant stakeholders often feel overwhelmed by the scope and number, for example, of indicators within the global framework, and that SDGs can be difficult to be integrated into daily business and national or local priorities. Oftentimes, project teams are not uniformly aware of the follow-up and review mechanisms that are set in place at country level and also at the global level by the UN process to help facilitate the sharing of progress and reporting on the SDGs. And so that can cause sometimes disconnect or difficulties in communicating and helping share more broadly successes and outputs of the different projects that are working at country or at subnational level. And so open communication is the most important factor in many cases when it comes to tackling such challenges, and especially in terms of articulating how the data can really be integrated with more traditional statistical approaches and data to help measure, monitor, and report on geospatially enabled indicators. In addition, social media and crowdsourcing efforts can also help solicit ideas and support the testing and refinement of methods by users. And so in the next few slides, I will be sharing a few examples of activities and work that we have been pursuing to help communicate and also share progress, examples of Earth observation uses with the SDGs to enable and help others consider such uses and pursue these. And so you can see here some of the activities that we have been focusing on in terms of helping integrate Earth observation data into global methodologies as notable inputs. And so this ranges by helping work with UN entities to review metadata and help refine methodologies, working at country level to pilot such global methods, but also to help identify and recognize locally produced innovations and communicate emerging data products and tools for local monitoring, but also helping integrate some of these tools and data into UN agencies and platforms. In addition, and through the website that I shared at the beginning of the presentation, what we have been doing is we have started capturing some country use cases where Earth observation data is already being applied to either help produce and track progress on these indicators, or in certain aspects to also drive and inform policies. And so currently we have a total of 22 cases from 8 countries that are demonstrating how Earth observation data is being applied. And I invite you to visit the website and look at those use cases. Another effort has been focusing really on communicating demonstrable progress in the development of methods and their sustained utilization by specific countries. And here I'm highlighting one of the projects that serves as a demonstration project for the EU4SDG initiative, which is also featured on the EU4SDG website. And so this project focuses on working hand in hand with the Belizean government to help communicate how and help enable the use of Earth observation data for marine and terrestrial ecosystem monitoring in support of goals for several of Goal 14 and Goal 15 targets. And so in particular, the project team is working with the Coastal Zone Management Authority and Institute as a key partner, who are responsible for monitoring coastal and marine water quality. And so in addition to looking at how the data can support specific production of indicators, the team has been working to understand challenges, but also to help build capacity of the in-country institutions to use the data and to be able to apply the data then to develop specific applications and support internal processes. And again, there is a link there where you can read through this project's activities, workflow, key challenges, and steps to overcoming those challenges. And you can see again how communication is highlighted as a crucial or one of the most key aspects of success for such project activities. Another activity we have been working on and I wanted to highlight today is the Earth Observations Toolkit for Sustainable Cities and Communities. And so this is an ongoing collaboration with UN Habitat and several partners within GEO, but also externally, such as the Human Planet Initiative, in addition to a group of regionally representative cities and countries that have applied and been selected to participate in this toolkit. And so this is an effort to develop an online knowledge resource that can help communicate and serve as a first step for countries and cities interested in applying Earth observations to support SDG monitoring needs and urban policy priorities. And so you can see some of the key toolkit components highlighted on the left-hand side of the slide here, including key data sets and tools, but also good practice examples and use cases, among other items. And so as part of this effort, one of the main drivers for this effort was to really help enable city-to-city and country-to-country learning. So the next, so you can see here some of the tools and platforms highlighted as part of this toolkit. And so we are developing an inventory of such data and tools accompanied by short guidance on their applicability for Goal 11 and new urban agenda topics. In addition, as mentioned earlier, we have a variety of use cases that we've been looking to capture through this online resource to help showcase how municipalities and cities across regions are already applying remote sensing and other types of Earth observation to inform sustainable development policies. Here I'm highlighting a use case from Thessaloniki, Greece, where the municipality is providing access to satellite Earth observation data using from the Copernicus program for the entire area of the region of Central Macedonia. And so there are different domains in which satellite data are already being applied in this specific use case, such as in relation to climate change monitoring, land and sea monitoring, in addition to emergency management and security. And so as part of this effort, again, through this collaboration and the effort to develop this online resource, we're looking to both highlight such use cases, but also help work with cities and municipalities that have interest in and perhaps have started working with the data, but where additional capacity is needed. So we're working to also communicate and help build that capacity to enable others to derive the most benefits from Earth observation applications. As part of also our efforts to recognize excellence and innovation, we've been looking to generate examples and help share these examples of how the data is being applied already in support of SDG implementation, monitoring, and reporting. So one effort has been through the GeoSDG Awards program, which was launched last year for the first time, and you can see the award winners from 2019 highlighted here. Among them, Uganda had won the 2019 GeoSDG Award for promoting use of Earth observations for early drought prediction that helped save $2.6 million US. And so these awards have, based on last year's experience, these awards help generate additional attention at national and local level from media, from the government, and have helped incite more interest for additional applications and uses of the data in sectors beyond the current sectors where they have been applied. And so this year we are continuing with this program, and we are in the process. We are actually going to be announcing the award winners for the 2020 GeoSDG Awards program on November 4th as part of the Geo Virtual Week. So again, I invite you to visit the Group on Earth Observations website and look for those announcements, because we have some very exciting projects, both in the sectoral and thematic categories of these awards, that will be getting announced this year. Lastly, I believe this is my last slide. So we have also been looking to document and share scientific knowledge and examples of how Earth scientists are working with countries and relevant stakeholders to integrate Earth observations in SDG indicator methodologies, country processes, and decision support systems. And so in June of this year, we released this special issue at the Remote Sensing of Environment Journal, focusing on EO and SDGs. And this included 17 publications and an editorial focusing primarily on 4 goals, and you can see the goals highlighted there, spanning from water and sanitation to life on land, life below water, and sustainable cities and communities. And we also had an editorial that reviewed these publications and focused on what were some of the key existing gaps and challenges. And so one of the items that we identified was the need for focusing more on transitioning toward new Earth observation for SDG frameworks that are focused more on the knowledge element of this data, information, knowledge, wisdom paradigm, rather than the data and information aspects. And so this transition requires filling this wide gap between acquired data and policy targets and goals. And so again, I invite you to follow the link that is on the bottom of this slide and read through some of these excellent publications and the editorial for more information. But that has been another way that we've been trying to capture and better understand how the Earth science community is linking to and working with stakeholders at the national and more localized level to share Earth observation derived knowledge and help support and inform decisions and monitoring activities in relation to the SDGs. And so with that, I want to thank you very much. Please reach out if you have questions. You can find my email address, Twitter, and also the information for the SDG website. So I will stop there and pass it over back to our moderators. Thank you.
Thank you for your excellent and informative presentation. So, Alan, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. You hear me okay? Apologies in advance. Great. Apologies in advance. I'm in Washington, D.C., and my PowerPoint's in Europe. So if the presentation isn't utterly seamless, please forgive. Can we get the PowerPoint up? I think it's coming. Hold on a minute.
Okay.
One of my messages is simplicity. This is the purest form of simplicity. Blank screen.
Please let me know if you can see. I have begun sharing the. I have begun.
I'm not seeing it.
Could you please confirm? I do see it on the screen.
Yes, Vicky, it's fine.
I'm not seeing my own presentation. There we go. Great.
Oh, good. Perfect.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to be talking about sharing science in plain English next. But not just plain English. English, of course, all of this is true in any language, and visuals, which are the universal language. Next. So I've been telling stories with maps and visuals and other multimedia and text for unbelievably going on 40 years now. One of my early in my tenure at National Geographic, which started in 1983, I worked with a climate scientist on a story on El Nino. And when we had finished developing the concepts, he told me that now I can explain to my mom what I do, which I took as an enormous compliment, and has been kind of my goal in communicating science ever since. Next, we'll come back to the mom idea in a minute. So for the last 10 years, I kind of said goodbye to the traditional medium of printed maps and National Geographic magazine, and joined ESRI and developed, formed a team that developed what became ArcGIS story maps, of which there are going on 1.5 million now. And it's been a real thrill to not just inform people via multimedia storytelling, but enable thousands and thousands of people to tell their stories. Next. So I'm going to talk about 5 things very briefly. One is the first is the power of multimedia. I'll talk a little bit about the unique power of storytelling. I'm going to emphasize the importance of being passionate and personal. Talk a little bit about hooks and gimmicks, and clarity and simplicity last. So please proceed. So this is an example of a story map that my team and I developed. Go ahead and click next. So that should start an animation. So this is the idea that we're pursuing to take advantage of the wonders of the digital age and web browsers to enable storytelling that very, very richly combines maps in 2D and 3D and multimedia content along with text to tell stories. And we do feel that maps and imagery, but maps and are especially are really a key way to enrich and enhance storytelling. It provides context and depth that it's very hard to achieve otherwise. Next. So we did a little research. We have always felt that storytelling is a powerful thing, but a member of my team did some research and discovered that character-driven stories, there's been a couple of studies about this, that they trigger the production of a neurochemical called oxytocin that actually makes people feel more cooperative. It's kind of like the empathy chemical. Next. And that this study concluded that they're real quantifiable results, so that individuals experiencing the effects of oxytocin by reading or experiencing character-based stories donated to 50% more of the causes. Next. And donated about the same percentage more to those causes than those not exposed to the neurochemical. So we actually, our stories actually change people. We change people's minds in a kind of literal way if we're effective. Next. So of course, as scientists, you're trained to be dispassionate and impersonal, but you need to kind of work to actively reject that in communicating to broader audiences. And to look into this a little bit more, I referred to a famous multimedia specialist, next, named Aristotle, who back in ancient Greece talked about modes of persuasion. Next. So one of them, the first one, all scientists are familiar with, using reason to persuade an audience. So being dispassionate, using facts and figures, backing up your, compiling data, backing it up, citing it, etc. Next. The next one, I think most scientists are also pretty familiar with, and hope to think that their advanced degrees and their experience provides authority and credibility. Next, but this is the tough one. The next one is pathos, creating an emotional response, and this is so key. So in order to get that oxytocin juicing one's brains, you have to not just appeal to reason, you have to appeal to emotion. And this, I think, is the part that's hard for scientists and technical people. Next. And then there's a final element that Aristotle talked about, which is kairos, which is time and place, acting here and now. And of course, with the urgent issues facing humanity, here and now is especially important. Also, in a more strict sense, trying to time your message with events and news pegs is key. Next slide, please. A little bit about a hero's journey. So who is your hero? And this is something that, again, goes against the habits of scientists. Next, please. And a hero can take a number of forms, and not every story needs a literal hero, but it's really important to try to add people to your story, and one of those people might be you. And this is, again, something that kind of goes against the grain of traditional science communication to other scientists, that you don't, the first person singular isn't cool, but in storytelling it often is. So this is a story we did with National Geographic, and it's the geographer Alex Tate told his story in first person as we presented very rich multimedia to illustrate his trip to as part of an expedition to Everest to map glaciers in very high detail. Next. Your hero might be a community. Here's the Doctors Without Borders did a story on the challenges of controlling a measles outbreak in rural Africa, an area that had not been mapped. So they tapped into the OpenStreetMap community to develop rapid mapping data, and they wisely focused less on the mapping data and more on the people who are affected by this outbreak. And then finally, next. Your hero need not necessarily be human. So I'm a longtime bird watcher, and there's several stories have depicted the amazing life histories of migratory birds, or the wandering literally across the globe of albatrosses. So finding a hero, singular or plural, human or non-human, is a key storytelling technique. Next, please. Another thing is to not be shy about gimmicks, and I loved a perfect example in old media was Dimitrios's example of a flyer as literally a flyer as a paper airplane. You might think that's kind of a cheap gimmick, but of course it raised the visibility of that project enormously, really successfully. Click again, and we'll run this little animation. So we did a story, or I worked on a story on climate change, and I wanted to highlight key numbers. So I decided to click next to make it run. Thanks. To literally highlight those numbers, big bold numbers with graphics in the background, and then follow up with the data behind it, and maps and links to source information, etc. And instead of calling it something like key factors in climate change and sustainability, we called the story Hot Numbers. And I think that name and that gimmick helped the story be much more successful and get lots more traffic. Next. So don't be afraid of using those kinds of hooks and gimmicks. It's those little things can make a huge difference. But it's really important overall to strive for clarity and simplicity. Now my slides are pretty plain. There's not much detail there, but what I try relentlessly to eliminate unnecessary items. Everything from little borders and rules and outlines to extraneous text with polysyllabic explanations that are going to go over the heads of broad audiences. Next. So back to moms. This is my mom. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us, but I like to think of my mom when I'm trying to tell a story. And I think I urge you to think about how you describe your work to your mother. You don't talk down to her. You see, your mom's pretty pretty bright. I think it's safe to assume, but you simplify your language. You start to eliminate the terms that you use every day in your work, and find ways. Maybe you use analogies and metaphors, and so this is your mom is a key audience, and she's representative of a very broad audience, and a good sort of guiding principle. Next. So yeah, how do you talk with her about your work? Next, you don't use those technical terms. I urge you to. I'm not here to sell a product, but I've collected a number of ArcGIS story maps that I have had nothing to do, but the community, our growing community of storytellers, have used. Many of them nonprofits or government agencies, people like the Smithsonian Institution or the Nature Conservancy, etc., have produced beautiful stories. There's a quick link there that you might take a screen grab of. And these stories, I think, are inspirational. They use some of the techniques I've talked about and many others to tell really effective and beautiful stories. Next. So just to conclude, you need to think a little bit differently when you're telling a story to a broad audience. So I like to think of visuals and text as equals. So a lot of us are kind of stuck in old media, and we think about writing an article and then think, well, now how am I going to illustrate this article? Instead, I like to think of visuals often first, but at least as equals to the text, and to conceptualize them together. Brevity is extremely important, especially on the web, which is really a sort of attention deficit disorder type medium. Try to maximize your impact, and don't be afraid of that pathos. Don't be afraid of adding some emotion, getting your own voice into the story. Finally, or almost finally, it has never been more important for us to tell our stories. We talked about early that good science communication has benefits, but there's been a lot of good science communication, and good science is endangered by benighted leadership and the rise of internet trolls and other awful phenomena. So it's really, really important for us to be doing this work and communicating to broader audiences. Next. So we do face huge challenges, both in terms of communicating science, but in terms of the health of the planet and the struggle for a sustainable future. So everybody needs to understand these challenges and to join the effort to overcome them. So it's never been more important to be telling the story of science in a way that's accessible to everybody. And with the next slide, I think that's my farewell. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.
Alan, thank you so much for your inspiring and thought-provoking presentation. And we will go to our last guest speaker. It's Bente. Bente?
Yes. Thank you so much, Mirka. Thank you so much. Very interesting to listen to all of you. Maybe I should turn on my camera as well. I forgot that. Yes. Thank you so much. So I'm going to talk about how we can maximize and enhance the impact, in this case, the eShape project, and using then the network and other Horizon 2020 projects. And I will just start by telling my story, as encouraged by previous speakers. I will dive into the project itself. We have internal communication and we have communication with the network. Then I will speak a little bit about the different activities that we can do together. So first, my story. Here you see a picture of my home forest. I'm Norwegian, grew up and still live in the countryside just northwest of Oslo. I hike here very often. And if I should describe myself in one sentence, cover everything, is that I'm a nature-loving gadget geek. And here you see it illustrated by both some pictures and some maps. In situ, here you see me in an island north of Norway, and you see a Copernicus or a Sentinel SAR image of the very same island I'm on. So I'm passionate about space, obviously. My background is astrophysics as well. But because I'm a nature-loving gadget geek, I have engaged in another Horizon 2020 project called NextGeos. And of course, as mentioned, I'm an advocate for, a member of the advisory board of eShape. Now, when you see a project presented, you see it often like this. So sort of a logo soup, that's the representation of the consortium. But of course, behind these logo soup, we have people. And here you see the some of the representatives. eShape folks will recognize several here, and so will NextGeos people. You see the coordinator of NextGeos, you see the coordinator of eShape, and many other partners. And we are here meeting physically, good old times, in Washington, D.C. at the GEO plenary, so the Group on Earth Observation plenary, an annual event. And because of these interactions between us, we know each other. There's a love affair that obviously between eShape and NextGeos. And that opens up an ocean of opportunities to enhance the impact. And a key element in that enhancement to me is, I'm going to tell a story when I was a little girl growing up in the Norwegian countryside. The spring is a big event. And each spring, children like myself, we were gathering the spring flowers and we were offering them to our neighbors. It was just a gesture of being nice. And the reward was we got smiles and everybody was happy. And this goes also, in my opinion, when you want to communicate and interact with the audience or internally in a project, you need to give until it hurts. It will pay off. And give is information and doing each other favors, etc. Again, here is an example then of a network. So we should be communicating with each other internally and make sure that we are generous with information. The same goes in the network itself. So here is an example where you have people from different projects. You have organizations like OGC. This is actually a meeting at the Google office in London a few years back. The result of this meeting with us face-to-face talking to each other was the start of agreeing on a standard between W3C and OGC. So it's very fruitful to meet physically, individual to individual. And we talk often in the context of the European Union, in Horizon 2020 program, etc. We talk about the ecosystem of Earth observation, platforms, etc. As a matter of fact, it's the ecosystem of people. And here is a collection of people from the Canberra Ministerial Geo meeting last year. You see the eShape coordinator, which is also actually a NextGeos person. RG, you are here you will recognize this. And so I show you the people behind the logos. So you see each of us are representing these logos and we meet each other and talk. Another thing I want to take away from this image is I'm not being self-centered. I'm just using me as an example. You can identify yourself. I'm sure you can recognize this situation that you have many hats when you are a member of the community. So I was at this meeting in Canberra. I was representing a Horizon 2020 project called EO for Agri. I was the Norwegian delegate to the plenary, and I, of course, represented my own company, BLB. And what type of activity is fruitful to do when you are in this network of people relating human to human, even if we do this now virtually? Well, it's this concept called the Inspire Hackathon. It's not an event. is not like an hackathon and that's it. We go home after results. This is a series of events, so we call it more of a process. And it's for developers. Many of the developers are scattered around in the different projects, and also an important target audience, by the way. I think Dimitrios, he was talking to the extreme, what I call the extreme end users, but many of the users, many of the target audiences that we need to communicate with when it comes to eShape, for instance, and NextGeos, just to use those examples, are actually other developers and researchers and designers. A scientist is not just a scientist. Scientists have expertise areas, so it doesn't mean that they understand everything else in science except their own field. So we created this framework, the Inspire Hackathon, where these developers, experts from several Horizon 2020 projects with a common goal to make best use and sustainable use of Copernicus data, Inspire, which is a directive in Europe, for those of you who are not from Europe, and GEOS. So that's the common sort of framework. And we have a series of events, so hackathons. So you see here, this is an old representation of this. There have been many, many more Inspire hackathons. And it's a very organic way. It's very open. It starts with a group of organizations and Horizon 2020 project. They end, as you know, but through this hackathon, we are enabling the facilitating the communication and transportation of information and knowledge also into the future. And one of the components, important components of this Inspire Hackathon concept is the webinar. The webinars we are organizing webinars every hackathon. They are addressing common topics and also are educational in character. And I want to highlight two hackathons that were addressing particularly the audience in Africa. In GEO, the Group on Earth Observation, we acknowledge that there are certain regions of the planet that are not so much engaged and so not so much benefiting from all the results and resources that we have. And one of those areas is Africa. Now, Africa is, of course, very diverse, but at least we address that. And it was a great success. We engaged through using the network. We were using local universities, regional GEOs, and so we were using the network that was created in these hackathons as co-organizers to reach out to the local population. And we succeeded in engaging many local Africans, ranging from experts, from the scientific region, from scientific organizations, from commercial actors and students. And not only did we activate the Africans, but it turns out this was very popular across the globe. So you see, we reached 24 countries, 4 continents, and in the first one in Nairobi. And I want to, and you see here that the sponsors are listed. This again, unfortunately, I don't have the faces to represent the logos here, but of course there are people behind it. And we were communicating across these different projects and organizations, and we created a win-win-win situations under the framework of the Inspire hackathons. The material will be archived and will be then used for the next version, etc. So you create a community where you can have an enhanced impact of each of the projects that are involved in this process. And it's very open, it's transparent, open, and you can participate over a long time period. And of course, I have to mention social media. I think in terms of enhancing the impact of eShape in this case, I think it's a very good idea to be more connecting at an individual level for us who are responsible for the social media channels. I'm using Twitter here because when it comes to our topics of Earth observations and science and innovation, Twitter is a very powerful network. You reach a lot of the target audience when it comes to experts, not so much the farmer, Dimitrios, you're right about that, but a large group of your target audience can be reached through Twitter, but you also have Instagram, of course, LinkedIn, Facebook, and all those. But I think that we can gain a lot by engaging even more with collaboration between us who runs the social media channels, and be giving, be generous, give until it hurts, because we are mutually benefiting from this. And my takeaways are that we should obviously continue to network and to nurture our network. It doesn't stay like a value forever. You actually have to invest in your network as an individual, and you need to be generous to share as much as you can, because you will get manyfold back, and collaborate with concrete activities. And I see now that I lost, for some reason, one of my slides where I show the start of the love affair between eShape and XGEOS was actually to collaborate around a common a webinar. XGEOS started before eShape, and so we had like the XGEOS webinar series, and we found a common interest. It was standards. So we created this webinar, and we also engaged then organizations interested in the same topic as us, namely with standards. You had OGC, so the Open Geospatial Consortium, you had the Inspire Directive, and also NASA, actually. So we started to use the webinar as a common ground, common activity to nourish the relationship, to communicate across our projects and even beyond. So the webinar is also not only to communicate the results, but actually it's a way of building a network and communicating inside of the projects and among, a selection of projects. The Inspire Hackathon, I can only recommend that everybody who has the capacity to do so use the Inspire Hackathon concept. You are more than welcome. I'm also a member of the committee of Plan for All, who is the main coordinator and initiator of the Inspire Hackathons. So it's totally up to us as a community to use that possibility, and of course, continue with the social media channels. And thank you. That was all from me.
Bente, thank you for sharing your invaluable experience with us. And please, can you stop sharing your screen and be muted?
I'm trying.
And your camera off? Okay.
Have not, yeah.
Anyway, we would like to thank all of our speakers for their wonderful presentations and for offering our audience the unique opportunity to benefit from your expertise. We would like to proceed with a roundtable discussion, and at this point, we would like to also welcome to our team Alessandra Vernile from Eurisy and Francesca Piatto from EARSC. Alessandra and Francesca, please introduce yourself. Francesca or Alessandra? Hi, Francesca, let's start from you. You're muted, Francesca. You have to unmute yourself.
Ms. Piatto, it seems that We cannot hear you even though you are unmuted. Could you please make sure that you have selected the correct microphone in your settings, please? Perhaps someone else would like to take the floor.
Alessandra,
I can take the floor. Yes.
Yes, Alessandra, please. Oh,
yes.
Can you start your camera also?
I'm sorry. I have to. I'm actually outside my building because the connection is very poor. So I'm very sorry. Just to introduce myself, my name is Alessandra Vernile. I am project officer at Eurisy. We are one of the partner, of course, of the consortium, and as also was mentioned at the very beginning in the first presentation, we work a lot with users, with end users in Eurisy. We have a membership base that is definitely more institutional than commercial, and we try to stimulate the dialogue between the end users that are outside the space sector and the space agencies or space offices. In particular, we try to be between like the upstream and the downstream sector. And we do this since 1989. And I mean, the idea at the very beginning was a very revolutionary idea 31 years ago. And today we can say that we are doing a lot of, we are connecting a lot of success, in particular, like going in sectors that are very far from the space sector. For instance, I want just to mention sports or cultural heritage, just for saying one. So it's it was a very innovative approach long time ago, and it's still a very innovative approach, and it's very good for the users to talk about space, or at least like discuss about the benefits of what space can do for them. Space technology, satellite technology can do for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Alessandra. Francesca, are you ready? Francesca? No. Okay. Well, then Alessandra, it was a common question for you and Francesca, but you can answer it in the meanwhile. Does your communication approach deliver the expected results and benefit your members? What is your feedback from your members?
Yes. So what we can say is that in general, the communication approach that we adopted, is a very, we try to have as much as possible our participation to events, in the sense that having a communication that is not just based on conferences or workshops, but we try to do something else more. We try to collect good practices and share good practices with our community, in the sense that, for instance, if you go on our website, there is a good practices database. And this good practices database is fundamental, because if you have to communicate with the users, having examples of other users that adopted for a similar need or for a similar challenge a specific satellite-based solution, it's beneficial for them to understand in a clear way what they're going to expect. Because what we noticed in over the past years is that, and this is true for every sector, and in particular this is also true for the E-Shape project, is that there is a lack of communication between the end users and the service providers or the designer of particular applications or solutions, because there is a language that is used that is really like kind of complicated, very technological. And in this sense, like E-Shape and Eurisy have a similar objective, a kind of shared objective. The communication strategy is kind of shared, in the sense that we want to favor the user take up. And at the same time, we want to insist a lot on the needs of the users, to try to understand and to adapt our communication with them. In the sense that if I have to bring a solution related, for instance, to health or agriculture, I have to understand who I'm going to talk with. We need to understand as much as possible who are our interlocutors. And only this way you can have a very like targeted more than targeted, a tailored, let's say, communication, clear and tailored communication. So we try to insist a lot on the benefits on specific applications, and at the same time, we want to, and maybe this we will do in the framework of eShape. We want to do that probably in a more advanced phase, to involve even our members. There are space agencies, so they're not commercial actors. This gives also the developers of the different solutions and the opportunity to kind of interface with different actors, with the different interlocutors, and at the same time, I mean, for instance, for the events where Eurisy participated over the past months, which is the UN-OSA Austria Symposium in September and the very latest Smart Farming Conference, the feedback that we had was really positive. We also had the opportunity to share the events on our social media channels, and we had good feedbacks from them. So in this sense, it's really, I mean, it seems it's working. So bringing our own way of working, very needs-centered, or at least user-centered, it's working, and it will be also beneficial for eShape, I believe. But I think, yes,
we have to. Sorry for intervening, but
yes,
we have to say thank you. Just yes. We have to move on.
It was done. I was finished.
Okay, thank you so much. And actually, the
Mirka,
second.
May I just comment just a bit in order to replace what Francesca may have said from her side?
Okay. Yes, Emmanuel, you will talk on behalf of Francesca.
Yes, of course.
Yes, Emmanuel, please. Okay, so actually, it's you heard the question. I can repeat it. It's how does your communication approach deliver the expected results, and how does it benefit from your members? And what is your feedback from your members?
Absolutely. Let's say the first point I would say that.
Sorry, Emmanuel. We have to keep it in 2 minutes short. Thank you.
Absolutely. I would say first, the onboarding process is, I think, really representative of the interest of our members in eShape. It's quite impressive to see how many companies have applied to become an eShape partner. This is the first point. Another one is about during the work we did over the last few months. We really discussed a lot with users. And exactly as was said before by Alessandra, it's obvious that the definition of a common vocabulary is really important. And that's why we want to, and what we did is really to interact with them, to translate in a way what pilots are doing in order to understand what are the real needs and the challenge of this community of users, in order to find a way to align the value of the pilot and the current needs and challenge of this community of users. If we achieve this, and I think we have a lot of interest from all the different communities on the member side, on the user side, we can really have a significant impact, we as a eShape consortium. So we really need to continue and to develop this interaction. We really need to maintain this connection with industries in order to move from, as we want to develop more services and potentially more sustainable services, and to develop connection and interaction with these two communities, which is really the aim of EARSC, to be an enabler between the different EO communities of users. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you. Well, actually, now we would like to raise a question for all our guest speakers. eShape is a project that has 55 partners and 4 more from today. 27 pilots under 7 thematic areas that delivers Earth observation benefits to a wide range of stakeholders in key societal areas. We would like to hear from each one of our speakers one essential element of how we can break out of the Earth observation community and reach a wider audience. Argyro, let's start from you.
Yes. certainly. So, to your question, I think that to begin with, it is important to actually let me turn on my camera as well. So it is important to be able. So
please forgive me, Ms. Kavvada. You have there's a lot of echo on your end.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Is this better?
No, perhaps you need to lower the volume.
Continuing. Perhaps someone else can go first, and I can try and fix that.
Okay. Please turn off your camera, Argyro. Thank you. Alan, would you like to answer our question? One essential element of how we can break out of the Earth observation community and reach a wider audience according to your experience. You told us that stories change people's minds, so please share with us your thoughts.
Sure. A couple of thoughts. One is of course to choose an audience. Who do you really want to reach with what sort of message? Second, of course, is the message itself. So what is a message that's going to provide real benefit to that audience? And then third is to come up with a narrative that's compelling, and hopefully, again, as I mentioned, you can find a hero or a character or a person that is affected or might be a beneficiary of some effort, and profile that person as a means of bringing that topic to life. So I often think about macrocosm and microcosm to present a big issue, but to drill down on an individual or a small community to show the impacts of that larger phenomenon. And then finally, to try to pin that communication to some kind of event, whether it's a holiday or the official take your dog to work day or whatever it is, to come up with a sort of news peg or an event to tie your story to.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you. Dimitris, you stated that Earth observation has the potential to serve so many audiences and is part of a bigger story. Can you please give us your perspective to the same question? One essential element of how can we break out of the Earth Observation Club?
Sure, I will. Thank you, Mirka. So I think it's a very interesting question, and I think that one of the challenges here is indeed this issue of target plurality. So I don't want to repeat too much what Alan said. Alan said basically hit the nail on the head with all three of the points that he made. But I mean, there are a large number of pilots. So there's potentially, and okay, these are divided up into sort of seven clusters. I really think the challenge is for each cluster to build a bridge to the community that it's serving, and again, to repeat my co-speaker, having a champion from that community to be the voice for each pilot would, I think, be incredibly valuable.
Thank you, Dimitris. Argyro, are you ready?
Yes, so perhaps we can try if everybody can mute their mics. Hopefully that reduces the echo. I don't know if that's better.
It's better than previously. Okay.
Wonderful. So, I would think that utilizing the common language of global policy frameworks such as the Sustainable Development Goals, in addition to other global sustainability agendas, including the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction and the climate, the Paris Climate Accord, are just some examples of global frameworks that can be utilized as a tool due to their integrated nature to help facilitate knowledge sharing and collaboration that goes beyond the Earth observation community. So these are policy agendas that have been agreed upon by all UN member countries, that there are mechanisms in place and efforts that are being undertaken to help connect these and align them to local priorities and development plans. And so that can be one avenue and way to where already collaboration is taking place across governments and different sectors, including non-public and public sector, in addition to local communities. And therefore, that may be one way to help bridge and go beyond that communication, beyond the Earth observation community itself. And so today, I think, I and some of our other speakers have presented the different efforts and initiatives that are ongoing that help make these connections and bridge the gap between the Earth observation community and the development community, including new non-traditional users such as statisticians and others at national to local level.
Thank you, Argyro. Bente, please, just for 2 minutes, give us your perspective on Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Bente. You have 2 minutes, please.
Yes, so I will go back to, well, both, I think Alan and we are very much aligned, even though we come from different places. The individuals should be more in focus. I think that in reaching out to the end user community, so outside the Earth observation community, you need to be very interested in the individuals. Learn what is the daily life, what are they passionate about, and so put more passion there to be more personal, to connect directly with the end user. But I will correct myself immediately also to say it depends a little bit, because sometimes a developer, a really nerdy developer only passionate about coding, for instance, maybe is not the right person to talk to those who are not interested or don't even know what Earth observation is. So look at if you can use the network and how somebody who understands the geeky nerdy coder, not to stigmatize anybody, but talk to that person and then translate it to get the necessary information, if that is in fact is necessary at this point. Because I don't think that a farmer care at all about Earth observation. They don't even know, they don't want to know what it is. They don't really care. And I think Dimitrios said it more or less. So be aware of the individuals. I think that will be my advice when in order to reach out from the Earth observation community to other communities. Be aware that not everybody knows what you know, and they don't even care. So be a human being.
Thank you, Bente. Thank you. So generally, as a conclusion, we can say that it is highly essential to make a scientifically based voice heard loud and clear, especially in time of crisis with COVID-19 and climate change becoming the burning issues of our time, and with a large number of people being deeply concerned by their dramatic effects. By considering the needs of the public audience versus a scientific one, by crafting an appropriate message and communicating it clearly, you will be more effective at bringing the world of science to the general public. And at the end of the day, the fundamental objective is to establish a deeper and more solid relationship based on trust between science and society. Scientists need to be more responsive to the changing needs and concerns of society, and society in turn needs to understand and support the positive role of science. And at this point, we would like the communication and dissemination team of eShape. We would like to thank Alan, Argyro, Bente, Dimitrios once again for their invaluable contribution to our session today. And we would like to thank everyone who attended. Enjoy the rest of the sessions.
Thank you so much. This was very, very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.